The Panthers' long winning streak against the Detroit Red Wings is, in fact, over, with the Lion King making his return to South Florida. And the Panthers have their first 3-game losing streak of the season.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, January 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at Monoman12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. And today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com and use Locked On to get $20 off your order. That's JASE medical.com. So the Florida Panthers go into this matchup against the Detroit Red Wings with no Aleksander Barkov. Paul Maurice did speak about how something that is still a bit tight, but still very short term and nothing of worry. So a lot of lineup differences on the night for the Panthers, but still gave themselves a chance to win and led for most of the night before losing in overtime against the Detroit Red Wings. Dylan Larkin with the game-winning goal. And here to break down this 3-2 overtime loss for the Florida Panthers against the Detroit Red Wings from Amerant Bank Arena. He was actually there in person tonight. He is formerly of Fox Sports Florida, producer and host Frank Forte, a recurring guest here on the show. Frank, welcome back to Locked On Panthers, my friend.
Thanks, Armando. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, my friend. And let's just go right into the biggest takeaways in this one. Like I said at the top, no Aleksander Barkov. Had the lines look like Anton Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen and Sam Reinhart on that top line. Obviously, the whole fan base has spoken about how Lundell was with Reinhart last year versus playing without him as well. But I thought the line, as far as the night went for this one, I thought they had a lot of energy, especially Eetu Luostarinen. My goodness, he was bodying up guys on the half walls, on the forecheck. The second line was also creating multiple opportunities as well. The Detroit Red Wings, as far as generating speed through the neutral zone, it was not. They weren't generating as much as the Florida Panthers early on, and not getting traffic in front. But Red Wings made their adjustments when necessary, especially on the last few goals that they scored and all. And obviously for this one, a lot of 4-on-4 time as well for this one on the night, as this was a penalty-filled fest in this one. So what are your biggest takeaways on the night for this one? And of course, I got to mention Alex Lyon being the star of the night for the Detroit Red Wings. How about yours?
Yeah, I thought he played really well. I thought the save on Bennett early in the third period, where Tkachuk made the between the legs pass from below the goal line, and Bennett right on top of the crease, and Lyon got the pads together, and that to me was a huge key save. To me, the two key plays of the game were that save and the call on Ekblad in the final minute. I mean, I thought it was an evenly played game by both teams. I thought 2-2 was a fair score going into overtime. Obviously, Detroit had the advantage with the power play going to OT. But I thought, neither team really outplayed the other through the course of the first 60 minutes. I thought Lundell looked a lot better on that first line with Reinhart. He and Luostarinen moving up to play with Reinhart. I thought the Bennett line generated really good chances. Sam had another great chance that Lyon got a blocker save on him. I can't remember if it was it had to be the second period. Because I think after that Bennett chance, the Panthers didn't have a ton of good looks in the third. So I thought Lyon was really good. I have to say, I was really impressed with Detroit. I think they're building something there.
Yeah.
And clearly, of the three teams that were supposed to be on the way up this season in the Atlantic, Buffalo, Ottawa, and Detroit, Detroit's clearly the top of that group. And you look up and down their lineup, and I think they put a really good group together. I like some of their guys. I like a lot of their guys. The two goals that they scored, I mean, one was a great deflection by Rasmussen. There's really nothing anybody could do about that.
Yeah.
And then the second goal, they basically penned the Panthers in their own zone for a long shift, and they just had that little extra bit of energy and battle along the walls that led to that second goal. The overtime goal, it was hard to tell from where I was sitting, Armando. It looked like it took a deflection on the way into Bob, maybe off Mikola's skate or whoever the defenseman was. So I didn't think the Panthers gave up a ton of chances in 60 minutes. So again, I thought it was an evenly played game. I liked the way the first two lines played, the way our defense played. But I still think at this point, with Barkov in the lineup, it's still a top-heavy team. I just don't think, and I give Stenlund a pass on this because he's got like 8 goals as the 4 center, and he's an elite penalty killer. But I don't think they're getting enough out of their third and fourth lines to be a big-time contender. Maybe that changes down the road. Maybe Bill Zito can work some magic and get somebody in to be a third-line winger. Because if you look at the production from the third-line wingers, ostensibly, and when they're healthy, it's Cousins and Luosterainen. It's 10 goals? Right, something like that, 9 or 10. I know Cousins has 2. Lusty's got 7, 8, something like that. I don't have the exact number on it, but I think you just need more out of the bottom 6.
Yeah, looking at the bottom 6 right now for the Panthers, the Stenlund line was outshot 12-6 in shots on goal 8-3 at 5-on-5 as well, and all on the night as well. And the fourth line outshot 3-2 at 5-on-5. Not much 5-on-5 time, obviously, with the amount of 4-on-4 play that we saw as well. But it was just like most games we've seen this season. It's been those lines as well for the Panthers. But we did see Sam Reinhart continue his goal scoring streak. 8 straight games with a goal, all of them on special teams. 6 power play goals, 2 shorthanded goals. Great denial of the zone by Kulikov to get the puck up the zone. And Detroit made a big mistake having all eyes on Anton Lundell right before that centering feed to Sam Reinhart for when that made it 1-0. And we spoke about. Go ahead.
It was from my vantage point, I was sitting in the corner basically along the goal line about 14 rows up at the end where the Panthers scored both goals. And from my vantage point, I had a great angle. Kulikov made a great read, great anticipation to break up the play, and then a great dish by Lundell. And I mean, I don't know what else we can say about Reinhart. We're running out of superlatives. He ties his career high with 33 goals, set as a Panther. He gets his 500th NHL point and does something that nobody else in NHL history now has done, and that is score special teams goals in 8 consecutive games. I mean, I don't know what else you can say about the guy. I just hope and pray the Panthers find a way to get the money to sign him, or that he'll take, I don't want to call it the hometown discount. I'm going to call it the state income tax discount.
Fair point.
Because, he's in real dollars, if he signs something equal to Willie Nylander's, it's going to be the same amount of dollars in the pocket. Then, if he signs for $2 million, $3.5 million less, it's going to be the same amount of real money after taxes.
Yeah, and I took an opportunity tonight to watch the TNT broadcast, which was actually very chill vibes kind of broadcast. It wasn't necessarily play-by-play. It was just 4 guys kind of sitting around the couch, except without the beers, just chatting about the games, what they're seeing and all. And Paul Bissonnette
was it the hockey equivalent of the Manning cast?
Somewhere around there, except no cameras on their faces.
I got you.
Paul Bissonnette brought up a point is money is not everything, but you don't get to play with Aleksander Barkov and have a lot of sun every single day. So something else to consider.
And I know, Reinhart loves it here. I mean, he said as much. I mean, it's a for him it's a great place to live. The fans have been great to him. The facilities are excellent. With the new practice facility now, I think it's more convenient for a lot of the guys because they live in Fort Lauderdale. So and like you said, the ability to play with a guy like Barkov. Um, sometimes it's not all about the money. Sometimes you take a little less for the other things.
Mm-hmm.
And, hopefully he's of that mindset because he's playing as well as anybody in the NHL, maybe not named McDavid.
Yeah, no doubt. And just one goal behind Austin Matthews right now for the league lead in goals. So very exciting race that we're seeing here for the Rocket Richard. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more about when we thought this game was won or lost. We are going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. And I know we come to sports to escape from some of the crazy realities in real life, but can we talk just for a minute about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. And this is scary. I can't imagine more helpless feeling than if a family member of mine or one of their kids got sick while a supply chain issue kept them from getting life-saving medication they needed. Thankfully, they'll be okay because of Jace Medical. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could help any of us. Visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It'll be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medication will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's JASE medical.com. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Back on this Thursday, January 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday edition of the show. So just like when we do wins, we discuss when we thought this game was won. In this instance, we got to discuss when we thought this game was lost for the Florida Panthers. Out of all things, flurry of chances, centering feeds to that Alex Lyon was able to just be ready for multiple times on the night. But this was a bit of a coin flip for me, but I decided to go with when Ekblad went to the box for the penalty on the hook. I thought about doing the embellishment call on Evan Rodrigues, which denied the Florida Panthers a power play, which the Detroit Red Wings defended very well with blocking the centering feed to Reinhart, and difference between Barkov on that half wall battling out. But going into the overtime period, knowing that you are going to be down a man, open ice with the 4-on-3 as well, and then Dylan Larkin scoring that game winner, little patience, got Mikkola to go down, and then a screen out in front by Shane Gostisbehere, South Florida native Shane Gostisbehere. So that was my moment for me, Frank, when I thought the game was lost for the Florida Panthers. And how about yourself? When did you think this game was lost?
Well, you're doing a better job of distilling it down to one thing than I am, because I've got 3.
Okay, go for it.
And I think the Lions save on Bennett early in the third, where Tkachuk made a unbelievable between the legs pass to set him up. And I just looked skyward. I did one of these. How did that not go in?
Yeah.
Okay. The embellishment call on Rodrigues, and I'll come back to that in a second. And then the Ekblad penalty, which I thought was a pretty skinny call. But okay. The problem for me is I don't have the words to tell you how much I despise and this goes around the league, not just for that call tonight, the embellishment call. I think it's absurd. I think it's ridiculous. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to keep guys from diving to get calls. And if you have somebody that dives or embellishes something trying to get a call and it's not a penalty, then yes, give him 2 minutes for embellishment. But if it's a penalty and it's clearly a foul, who cares what the guy being fouled does? It has no effect on anything. The referee's got his hand in the air or in his mind, I'm putting my hand up when I see the foul. Who cares what Rodrigues does after that? It has no effect on the game. So, and I just hate that call. If it's a penalty, it's a penalty. If a guy gets up and comes back and slashes or cross-checks a guy after the original penalty, fine. But I hate, and that's not even a strong enough word, the embellishment call. And again, not just about tonight, around the league. I don't like it. If there's one rule in hockey that I could change, it would be that.
Yeah, and I think about a few things. I think about the fact that you could, in the game of basketball, you can do a pump fake, draw a foul with someone bumping into you, and then go to the free throw line for 2. But here's another one as well. Whenever there's a deep ball pass in football, you have 2 guys hand fighting, and then there's no flag, and one person wants offensive pass interference or defensive pass interference. But if they're both hand fighting, it's either foul on both or foul on nobody as well. If there was one, when it comes to that change, shouldn't the thought process be is if Evan Rodrigues really did embellish that call, play on, continue to play. If you really do believe that he did embellish that call as far as trying to gain an advantage.
Let's take it one step further.
Okay.
In your example, have you ever seen receiver and defensive back going down the field? Let's say the defensive back interferes with him and the offensive guy falls down. Have you ever seen it called both ways? Have you ever seen PI and unsportsmanlike conduct?
No.
Right? On the receiver? No, because it doesn't matter. If it's a foul, it's a foul. I just don't understand. Again, I understand they don't want guys diving to try to get calls. But if it is clearly a penalty in the ref's mind, then let's just call the original penalty and there's nothing else to it. I don't see the rationale in that. I remember there was one last year, I think it was last year, where Lomberg is chasing the puck at center ice. He gets interfered with. He falls down and immediately gets back up and keeps skating. Like as soon as he hit the ice, he jumped back up and kept skating, and they called him for embellishment. Like, what was that about?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's not, he didn't try and sell it. He got knocked off balance and he went down and he didn't slide along the ice and he didn't roll over like a soccer player 4 times. He immediately, as soon as he hit the ice and regained his balance, he got up and kept going. And they called him for embellishment. And he couldn't believe it. And that one sticks out in my mind because it was just absurd. So the absurdity of the embellishment call is, my soapbox, because like I said, if I had one rule to change, that would be it.
And that's a big one. And the fact that also the whole live time thing about this is the hardest part about it. And it's not a reviewable play. Neither. That's the thing about it. Just like balls and strikes are not reviewable plays in baseball too. So it's like a little bit of a how if you're the NHL and the NHLPA when it comes to discussing something like this is like, because at the end of the day, it is in fact the judgment call the way when you watch it in live time. So it's like, what do you define what is what?
I got an easy solution for you.
Okay.
Stephen Walcom says we're not doing that anymore.
Okay.
That's it. End of story.
assess unsportsmanlike conducts if they happen to do it again after that. Set a warning in the beginning, if anything.
Right, yeah, something like that. But I just, again, I just don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah,
understand it.
it's a frustrating one for sure. As the Panthers were denied a power play on that one, and now the Panthers, they face their first 3-game losing streak of the season, something that we haven't said at all this season. And we're going to actually discuss more of that in segment number 3 here on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. So stick with us. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And we are driven to search for the better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match. And you can do that all with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't help you hire faster. 93% of employers agreed Indeed delivers the highest quality of matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. So, and listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support the show by saying you heard about the Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Third and final segment here on this Thursday, January 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday, here with the former host and producer from Fox Sports Florida, Frank Forte, here on the show. And this one, as far as show planning when it comes to a third segment, it's always so it's never, you can never predict. I can never predict what I'm always going to be talking about in a third segment for a post-game show, but this one's a little different as far as the Panthers going through their first 3-game losing streak of the season. And like we spoke about, the Panthers, they didn't shoot themselves in the foot. Faceoffs were 61% to 39. Corsi 4 on the night was over 60% in all situations, especially 5-on-5. So had the puck a lot in the Detroit Red Wings zone. And kind of like in the Saturday game against the Devils, they had a whole bunch of opportunities, but Nico Dawes was outstanding in this one. Alex Lyon tonight for the Panthers. And for this one, I feel a lot different about the Panthers dropping a few games this time around than a few weeks ago when they were getting shut out in back-to-back games against Vancouver and Seattle. I mean, we spoke about Reinhardt's goal streak. Matthew Tkachuk, we didn't even mention him. 10-game point streak continuing for the Panthers going into this new year. We're seeing so many strides. We didn't see that bad goal by Sergei Bobrovsky, the one that you're scratching your head with too, as far as that. So how are you feeling, Frank, about this 3-game losing streak? Because for me, I'm unbothered.
Yeah. Before we get to that, I'm just reading something on Twitter right now, and somebody I follow tweets out, Maurice wanted so badly another fine tonight, but he resisted the urge. So just going to kind of leave that there about the some of the calls. In any event, yeah, I mean, again, I don't think they played poorly during these 3 games. They got goalied by New Jersey. They blew two goal leads against Anaheim, which, giving up breakaways and odd man rushes, you can't have that happen, especially with 4 seconds left in a period. And I didn't think Stolarz was particularly sharp, but tonight again they played well. So yeah, it's not. I don't think it's anything like the back-to-back shutouts on that West Coast trip. I think they're they're playing pretty well. They hit a bunch of posts the last 2 games, not so much tonight. But again, I don't feel as badly. You feel bad when you lose, but I don't feel as badly as you did when you're getting blanked 4-0 or 3-0 out on the West Coast. And again, they've got 2 points out of these last 3 games. They're at least getting a point. You'd like obviously both, but you keep banking points. It's the middle of the season, and every single point, as we saw last year, every single point matters. Which you'd like to have that extra point, but again, it's not a regulation loss. Against a team in your division, so it's a 3-point game, which is better than the alternative. But I don't think they're playing poorly. I do think there's still some. I don't think this is as deep a team as we'd all like it to be. And this might be a little bit of heresy, but as popular and a great a person as Ryan Lomberg is, I don't think he's playing with energy, but he's not having as much effect on games as he had last year in that 4th line role. Lockwood plays hard, but he's still looking for his first NHL goal.
Mm-hmm. Had a great opportunity the other night too.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to put one away now and then.
Mm-hmm.
You don't ask a lot out of your 4th line, but when you got a chance, you got to bury it. The other thing, and this is kind of off topic, but just you look around YouTube and Nick Cousins is getting a bad reputation around the league, and again, he's been struggling at the offensive end, and that's fine if you're playing well in other areas. But now referees are going to look at him, and other teams are going to look at him like, people have flat out said he's a rat. I mean, that to me, that's a little bit of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you're Brad Marchand and you're a rat, but you're scoring 35 goals, then it's not as big a problem. I'm sure you heard Kevin BX's rant on Cousins, and you don't want to get that reputation.
Mm-hmm. Now that
again, I'm going off topic on you here. I didn't think the 2 hits that got everybody upset were the worst things I've seen in hockey. For example, the Valimaki, you don't want to hit a guy when he's on his knees.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was a full-on blow. He kind of glanced his head and shoulder. And even Valimaki, when he got up, he didn't respond. He kind of looked at him and then he looked away. And then the other guy came in and plasters Cousins. But Valimaki didn't seem to take exception to it.
Yeah.
As opposed to Goodbranson in that incident. So I think the Panthers overall are doing, if you look at them to this point in the season, I think they're playing and their point total is about as good as we could have expected it.
And despite all that, they still, I know we don't have the 3-2-1 point system in the NHL, but there's something about a team whenever you see a whole bunch of regulation wins as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I was just talking about this weeks ago. It's like, man, we need to. I would hope to see the Panthers get into more overtime games to get that, at least that loser point. Crazy enough, their record is still 19-0-3. That includes tonight's record. That includes tonight's game when leading after 2.
Right.
Still hella impressive.
Yeah.
And the most regulation wins in the Eastern Conference at 24 after tonight's action. Only 2 games on the night.
Certainly the sky isn't falling. There's
no.
At least not to this point.
It definitely isn't.
They'll shake out of it on Friday night and get a win against a team that beat them in the opener. But a team that's already changed coaches and has had struggles lately. And
I think of just like how in baseball you think of series winning 2 out of 3 or a certain percentage, with the Panthers coming back from 2 goals down against the LA Kings, and then getting these loser points, you still have an opportunity to get 6 out of 10. And when you look at it from that perspective, you think the Panthers are still in perfect position right before they hit the road again, even though it's for 1 game.
Yeah.
So it's not like you said, the sky isn't falling here.
No. And I just hope Barkov is back soon, because to me, and I put this out on X or Twitter or whatever you still refer to it as, to me, it's such a big hole in the lineup, given the minutes he plays, all situations, power play, PK, 5-on-5, the number, the face-off wins, the ability to protect the puck and keep possession, which is, to me, is really important. To me, there's nobody on this team that can carry that burden or that load that he carries on a regular basis. So, I think we talked about this before. Maybe the last time it was on one. Number one centers don't fall off trees, and if you got one, you hope to keep him healthy. And he was on a heater, at least assist wise. He wasn't scoring goals, but he was getting 2-3 assists a night during that win streak, and playing some really, really good hockey. And I just think he's super tough to replace on this team.
Yeah, tough in the dot. You can't coach a guy to back check as well, and just the ability to find teammates. And Barkov, he will tell you the goals don't matter, and that he's just happy to set up his teammates, and the fact that the team is getting W's, that's really what matters to him. So thankfully, Maurice said that it's once again short term, so that's the good news about it. And hey, maybe we will see Aleksander Barkov back on the ice later on this week. Quickly checking the practice schedule, actually. The Panthers will be back at practice tomorrow at 12 o'clock at Emirates Bank Arena. So maybe there will be something else as far as an update for the captain, and we'll know that around noon Eastern tomorrow. So Frank, I want to thank you once again for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for joining, and tell everybody where they could follow you and your work online.
Yeah, if you're on X, it's at Frank J. Forte, and also check out www.fausports.com. I've been at Florida Atlantic University for the past 8 years. We have a show on Bally Sports Florida. It's Thursdays and Saturdays at 11:30 a.m. In the fall, it's all football. In the spring, it's all of our sports. And we've got a top 25 ranked basketball team right now. We're number 23 in the country, and we're real excited about that group. They've got everybody but one guy back from that Final Four team of last year. It's tougher when you're the hunted instead of the hunter, and we've found that out. We've lost a couple games we probably shouldn't have, but we've beaten a couple teams. We beat Arizona in double overtime, which a lot of people said was the game of the season so far in college basketball. So, www.fausports.com. We put our show, it's not only on Bally, it's on our website and on YouTube as well.
Awesome, Frank. Thank you so much, my friend, once again. And I will see you soon, hopefully.
All right. Thanks, Armando. Have a great night.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Frank Forte, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.